Hello. It is 8th of November 2020, and we are starting the discussion about the annual showcase of Latvian theatre held in framework of Baltic Drama Forum. That is an event that gathers together theatre professionals in Riga every third year. Along with the Baltic Drama Forum, the showcase of nominees for Performers' Night or Spēlmaņu nakts was taking place. Normally, the event of Baltic Drama Forum would bring to Riga 40 to 60 people, 15 delegates from Estonia, 15 from Lithuania, and more people from other countries. Unfortunately, the restrictions of COVID-19 have made possible only for some Estonian guests to come in presence. Today, we will be discussing 8 nominees, several digital performances, and one performance we have seen in video recording. Our guests have passed 4 very intensive days. For 2 performances a day, we have held also a scientific conference and a discussion about relationship of theatre and audiences in next 100 years. And now I will ask our guests, our foreign experts group, or our jury as we call it, to present themselves. They all are theatre experts, and they all come from Estonia. Could you start?
Yes, thank you. Hello, I'm Heidi Adma from Estonian Theatre Agency, and I'm a dramaturg.
Hello, my name is Anneli Saga, and I'm a professor of theatre research from the University of Tartu.
Hello, my name is Hedi Listomäe. I'm a lecturer of theatre studies at the University of Tartu and also the head of Estonian Theatre Festival Drama.
Hi, my name is Hanna. I am a bachelor student of theatre research in the University of Tartu and sometimes also write about theatre.
Hi, my name is Heili, and I'm journalist and theatre critic, and I head of newspaper Postimees culture department.
Hi, I'm Paul Piik. I'm a theatre producer and one of the founders of Project Theatre Kinoteater. I am not a theatre critic.
Thank you. So we have here both theatre makers and theatre critics. And first of all, I would like you to start with some general observations or things you have to say about this very particular and crazy year, where actually Latvian Baltic Drama Forum has jumped onto the very last wagon of this train because we are going on lockdown tomorrow. So if you can start from that side where you have the mic, just the first impressions and first things you have to, that came across to your mind.
Well, about this year, I'm not going to probably talk too much, but with this Baltic Drama Forum, I'm here for the first time, and I'm really happy that I came. Looking at all the shows, I have not been like disappointed at all. I've been finding very many good things in all the productions, and I was just talking, I think yesterday with some of the other Estonians that if only there would be like more performances with English translations, I would probably come more often to Latvia. But then again, why not just come to this Baltic Drama Forum every now and then you can see it all in a very small time frame. So I'm really happy that there's this possibility because yeah, I like that. Yeah, after this Baltic Drama Forum, I can really say that I like Latvian theatre scene.
I'm so happy to see all the performance, but I think this year a little bit hit Corona, all theaters and Latvian theaters. So, and I see many good performance, but this special performance I don't see this year, and maybe something I missed a little bit. But I am very happy to see all this Latvian performance.
I'm also agreeing with the former speakers that it's very nice that the Baltic Drama Forum took place, and I'm very grateful to be invited here. And what is more, I feel that in Latvia it became more real to me that the COVID is still very much a threat, because in Estonia the situation has been like much more easier, or not so pandemic, so to say. So in Latvia it was more real that people have to wear masks in theaters, and people take more precautions against COVID.
Yeah, I think we're all very grateful that we were able to come to the festival, and even though we're only 6 people, I think the organizers have done an enormous job to actually get us
VIP festival.
Yeah, get us here, and thanks for all the translations, and we're just 6 people sitting in an audience, and the performances have been translated for us. But also, just to give several general remarks, then I think it's also really hard to look away from the corona, that you see people in masks, you see people like only 50% in the audiences. But I think despite of that, we have seen many different things, different type of performances. And I think I've never been to a festival where at least 2 performances were digital performances. So that's also something, maybe a new experience for me.
I have been observing Latvian theatre since 2003 and has been trying to come back to Latvia as often as possible. That's why I really enjoy it when I meet my friends, my colleagues, and also actors and stage directors who I know already from the former visits. And also I think that, at least for me, this is the only and probably the last festival of this year. And we all know that Latvia will go to lockdown, and probably it will happen also in Estonia. So somehow it's a little bit like the Cameron's stories, that this is a big feast during the plague. And I think it also influenced our emotional and sensitive abilities to perceive the performances. But also, since I don't know, can we come back to more general remarks, then of course I would like to stress at least what concerns me, but probably also my colleagues, that during the festival we understood that as it should be, but theatre is tackling often a lot of local topics, local songs, tradition, television shows, and so on. And we are fully aware that actually we are not able to grasp all the details and all the connotations the productions produce for local audiences as it meant. So of course it could be that our impression is more superficial than actually a local audience perceives it.
At first I would like to thank Lauma and all the others who organized this festival for us. I have visited Baltic Drama Forum several times, I think through 20 years also, and Latvian Theatre's showcase. And I already have some favorite directors and dramaturgs here, and I could say that I found a few more from this festival to follow.
Great, nice to hear.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just also wanted to give one more like general remark, because when Anneli said that it seemed that there were a lot of local issues on the stage, then what I noticed that there are a lot of screens on the stage. And I was really wondering, because we saw online performances, but also, for example, Margarete or Finlandization that we saw today, also used actually a lot of screen. And I was just wondering whether it was the idea already before Corona, or it was really Corona that made directors make these kind of choices. That it seems to me that the screen is really back on stage, but I think we had lost for a while, at least in my opinion.
Well, actually during the first lockdown or emergency state we had in Latvia from March to June, all the world was a screen in all possible ways, and we were watching recordings, and we were having some performances made in Zoom or by Skype, and so it's kind of one of the inevitable things, although we are also entering in a new phase, I think, about text and theatre. And now we will start with examples from our showcase and probably leave the digital examples to the end of this discussion. But we will start with nominees for the Performance Night Showcase. And first performance, our guests, not all of them, but part of them have seen, is by British playwright Duncan Macmillan. The play is called The Lungs. Meanwhile, the translation in Latvian literally means the breath. So it is a story about two people, a woman and man. They don't have even names. They are like typified characters. And the interesting thing here is that the stage director Dmitris Petrenko transforms the possibly largest theater hall in Latvia in a huge black box where are two people making this performance. So I would like those who have seen this performance, as Hannah, Paul, and Heidi, to share their impressions of it.
Yes, I have also seen it in Estonia. So it was played in the Endla Theater in Pärnu in Estonia. So I maybe can give some, bring out some differences between them. I think it's a very important topic. The choices that people make are connected to the environment always, and also personal choices have to be taken account, and it's like definitely very topical in this day as well. I felt that the big stage that was transformed into the black box, as you mentioned, was maybe what made it a bit easier or harder actually to grasp for me personally, because the intimacy level was lost due to this. But I know that actually you liked it, Hayley, very much, that this dissonance was brought there. So I guess that we have a bit different opinions on this, but it was definitely interesting to see this another perspective from the Latvian way, and overall I was quite positively surprised still, because I think it's a topic that's it's possible to stage it in every country, because it's such an universal thing that it doesn't really matter in which country or in which part of the world it's brought into stage.
Just a short remark that Lungs has got 3 nominations for Performance Award, and paradoxically it's a best large-scale production. And this is also kind of a paradox we can think about, because it's a large hall. However, it is a rather, well, up to my mind, it's kind of small-scale performance despite the large hall. The nomination goes for Best Actress, Ieva Segliņa, which was who you saw, because there are 2 casts, but you saw the exact this. And another nomination goes for Author for Musical Score, a composer, Anna Ķirse. So Hayley, would you continue with analysis of Lungs?
For me was this performance very good, because I see how small is one person, how small is a woman and how small is a man who wants something for big for them, but the universal was so big after around them. I like this big hall.
I just thought that like it was 2 people on the stage. There was this really, I don't know, it created this intimacy, and it felt a bit like films by Richard Linklater, where you just have this captivating text and this really personal way of talking to each other, and you can just sit and watch. And I think it would have been probably easier to follow if it would be in our own language, or because I just felt at some point that going back and forth with the subtitles, it's just a technical thing, but that's something that would probably make it even bigger if it's just something that you can really get into and you can hear it and you can even close your eyes at some point, because that's where the sort of magic happens there, that it's just so good if it's good acting and good text. It starts rolling and rolling and rolling, and you really get into it. So yeah, I think I've had similar experience with some Linklater movies.
It's a nice comparison, actually, and Macmillan seems conquering the Baltic stage, not only in Latvia, because in Latvia we have currently 4 productions written by Macmillan, and it seems really becoming very, very popular here. Next performance we saw All Together was one of the nominees for Performers' Night with the most nominations. And it is a very particular story written by Rasa Bugavičute-Pēce and staged by Valters Sīlis, who is one of the currently topical Latvian stage directors, produced by Latvian National Theatre, The Boy Who Saw in the Dark. And this production has got 9 nominations for Performers' Night. And I would like probably start from Paul, because he's holding the mic, to start this, share your impressions about this performance.
I always like it when the topics in theatre are very strongly opening your eyes towards something that's really going on, that you sort of get a new perspective of something that you might not get. So at some point I was really like just thinking about the life of how it would be if it was my situation, or if it is someone else's situation. So I'm really glad that I think that's something that Valters Sīlis also does a lot, that he chooses topics that are either documentary or very, very strongly related to something real, and I think I enjoy the fact. But for me, I think at some point it got a bit too, the duration for me was a bit too long at some point. It might be also just the language barrier, but I had some trouble at the very end of the performance, that I couldn't really follow the logic. But nevertheless, it's something I take along, and I'm really happy to have seen so many scenes there that worked really well.
I just want to remark that it was the first time we tried to use this app, the new app for subtitles you can download on your mobile phones. So it's also for text-based performances, I think, very important to have this rather full, unless you are, of course, dealing with stage on your screen. However, it is the way how you can understand what's going on. It's just a remark. Hanna.
For me, it was one of the strongest performances out of all that we saw. I think it's, of course, it touches a very important topic, the people with disabilities and the marginalized groups in society. But moreover, I think it's very much sets the tone for most of the performances that we saw, actually, and that is the relationship between mother and the child, or the topics of motherhood in general. So there is definitely more to that than just the life of blind people, or how to deal in the life of blind people if you are the one that sees. So it was a very touching and emotional story, for sure. And it was interesting to see different perspectives, as also Paul mentioned. And what I also liked a lot was is the style of directing of Valters Sīlis. I have also had a chance to see his work in Estonia. I had a cousin in Vabalava, and I think it was noticeable that there are quite some similarities between this work and The Boy Who Saw in the Dark.
Do you have something to add about acting, about actors? Because when you are playing a visually impaired person, it requires certain, probably different skills or different empathy.
Yeah, for sure. I think they did a good job with this. I don't really have a personal experience with blindness, so to say, so I can't speak from the point of view of actually blind people, but I think it was believable and yeah, very well played.
Yes, thanks. I also actually really enjoyed the performance, and it was the same that I also saw the Estonian. I had a cousin that's actually made by the same people, Valters Sīlis and Rasa, yes, as a dramaturge. So also I think it had some similarities, as Hanna said. I also talked really just few words with Walter Siilis after the performance, and I was also really surprised that it is also made for blind people to come to see to the theater, because without knowing it, I thought that the sound design or the way the actors were doing all these different types of sounds on the stage was a really good idea, because it also, I think it's really how blind people actually function in the society, that you have to use your hearing to move around. But of course, if I knew that, or if I learned that there are also blind people coming to the performance, I think it's something also for them to see in the theater. But when you talked about the acting, then I didn't take it like this, that the actors were supposed to play blind people. I think what was really nice about the acting, that they really had to change between narrating, acting, making sounds, like taking these different roles, and even maybe they didn't, or some of the actors didn't have a lot of speaking text or like role in this way. They were on the stage almost all the time and had to do all different things. So I also really liked the directing in this performance. And I think also the set design, that it was like really just kind of a gray cupboards that you could transfer into different types of things. And I also think that being an actor, as the who was on the main role, Karlis, that I think it's really hard to this kind of lead this type of performance. And he was on the stage all the time, and I think he really did a good job in the main role.
I would like to make a little detour first. So whenever I go to a foreign country and watch the performances, I also partly act as a psychologist. So I'm watching performances and thinking that what is in the mind of this nation or the people of the country? What they are searching for? What are their dreams and fears and so on? And this year it happened that in a row I saw 3 quite similar performances. I saw Latvian versus Russia, then The Boy Who Saw in Dark, and The Country of Grandmothers. And all these 3 performances actually tackle childhood, or there is this kind of storytelling, how characters are trying to memorize their childhood, and way or another childhood plays a very important role in their adult life. And also certain ways of performing, as I said, this kind of storytelling was similar. So we also discussed it with my colleagues, because I think many of us noticed it, that somehow childhood and the influence of childhood on your adult life somehow seems to be like an important topic for Latvians. It could be wrong, but this we had this kind of impression. We saw this year very many productions made in Latvian National Theatre, and of course I personally admire the very high level of acting in this theatre. And also during the last 3-4 years, whenever I have come back to Latvia, Walter Siilis has been somehow one of the leading figures, or at least for me, doing not maybe avant-garde, but doing interesting stuff, and also doing it in Latvian National Theatre. So that's why I think it's interesting how young directors who have started more from this kind of this kind of outskirts of the theatre field actually are able to work in this kind of national theatre. That is, of course, quite difficult. As my colleagues already said, that also I really enjoyed the soundscape. And since I don't understand Latvian language, and I had to read the subtitles. But if I should not have been reading the subtitles, then I would like to close my eyes and concentrate only on the sounds and on the voice and the narrating and so on. Because I think that in this way, actually, the senses would be more or the hearing would be more influential and sensitive if you close your eyes, because of course visually it was also interesting, but I think that the dominant tool of expression was sound and voice. I also noted that actually actors who were impersonating characters, that actually they were playing their eyes closed. So they somehow also tried to embody the feeling of being blind. So when you don't see it, and that's why, I don't know, maybe they were also peeking. But if they really had their eyes closed, then that was of course wonderful, because they were very exact, or they could perform all the acts very correctly and found their cups and so on, so on. So it was also interesting how they impersonate the blind people. Do they try to exaggerate it to really make very clear difference that now I am impersonating blind and now I'm not? Also, I think the scenography was very clever, and it is a metaphor also, because I think nowadays, at least in Estonia, the mainstream theater is very realistic, and hardly I can find this kind of powerful metaphors as a centerpiece in the stage. I think here, like the archive, the memory, and how the neighboring shelves interacted with each other and so on. So I think it also created some kind of system. And of course, I would like to praise the leading actors, Karlis Reyers and the Agnese Cirula, who was playing mother. No. Ah, okay. Yes, sorry. Yes. So Daiga and Karlis, of course, I think made a really powerful duo in this production.
Have too much to add, but I just wanted to say that I really love this, how this minimalistic stage activates your imagination field. This worked for me, and also, as Anneli said, this switching between realistic and almost symbolistic level. It also worked for me. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much. I think it is one of the most thought-provoking productions of the last season. And, well, the number of nominations also shows that it has attracted attention also of the jury. Let's see how it turns out, but what I wanted to remark that lately, last years, actually in Latvian theatre, there have been several attempts to tackle kind of visually impaired or some kind of these marginalized groups or otherwise. And the impulse probably also came from Lithuanian director Karolina Žernytė, who did several workshops with stage directors. And we have had several examples where you are blindfolded, for instance, and participating in the performance. However, there have been some productions we would like to include, but they included also touching other people, and in this case it was not possible due to the restrictions, of course. Now we will turn to Gertrūdes Street Theatre. As I said, we will leave the digital performances to the end, but now we will turn to Gertrūdes Street Theatre and to American playwright Robert Askins and his play Hand to God, directed by Kārlis Krūmiņš. And I have a remark that this was actually his diploma work, and last year it didn't qualify for a performer's night as being a student's work. And there was a large discussion about it, whether the jury should include among all professional stakeholders of the theater scenes, whether the diploma works of young stage directors should be included or not. Then they decided that they should not be included, but this year it is among the nominees. So this was just to give you some context, and probably we start from Heidi, who is holding the mic. You don't want to start? Okay, Okay, exchange of the mics. Thank you, Paul.
That's a good background information. I just, before you even started talking about the background, I thought that I really liked the raw energy of the performance, and also, I guess, the rawness of some of the text and some of the scenes. I have seen student works before in Estonia, and sometimes the problem has been that because you are so enthusiastic that you go over the line with your rawness, and then it becomes a bit like, okay, now you went too far, and it's not like funny anymore, it's not like cool anymore. But for me, with this production, I felt that they didn't like cross the line that much, that they were right on the border, and I was like, okay, I can follow. And within all this rawness and all this stuff, there was still this sensibility as well, that I was really like trying to, or not trying, but I was with the characters. I wanted some of them to succeed and some not. So I think it's a very good start if it's diploma work.
Thank you. Haley?
For me, this performance was not student work. This was very great and very crazy. I don't know what this performance like for me or not. I don't know, because this was very different and refreshing. And I think for Estonia, we need some like this performance, some who were puppet and real people work together, and the team was not like for teenager, but so for adult people.
I agree with you that the refreshing is the right word to use about this performance.
It's very refreshing.
Refreshing, yes, and very weird in a sense as well. And I'm glad that we had one visual theater performance or a puppet theater performance also added in the schedule. It was interesting to see it. But for me personally, I felt that the topics that were explored in this performance, namely sexuality and religion, are a bit too like Americanized, or I don't really see how are they like relevant to the society that Latvia has these days, or also Estonia. I felt that it's a bit like too distant for me, and I personally really didn't relate to those topics explored in this, because I felt it was a bit too American, accustomed to the American culture. But definitely I would like to see the next works of this director, as it's his first work. I think it's a good start. Yes.
I really enjoyed this cooperating with the puppets and actors, but I have to say this story stayed too characteristic for me, and I didn't enjoy that part. It was hard for me.
Well, we are dealing with American playwriting in this case, and I think they were quite pure in style considering the material they have chosen. And we have also here two nominees for Best Young Actor. It's Agris Krapivnicis, who is the main character dealing with puppet as well, and Elizabeth Skrastin, who is Marjorie, the mother. So they are also kind of, I think, the merits for being nominated for young actors is quite in place. Now we will go to the performance we saw all in video recording. And this is one of the very special projects by a young theater company, Quadrifronts, founded by young Latvian actors, The Country of Grandmothers. Director is Paula Pļavniece. And this is also one of the probably most interesting social theater project that literally involves amateur choirs from different cities, and they have played this performance in several cities of Latvia. We were planning to go to Tukums, where one of the new versions would have been staged. Unfortunately, from October 15, the amateur choir rehearsals have been prohibited due to the overspread of COVID-19. So Quadrifronts company couldn't go to rehearse with this new choir, and therefore we chose to show you even not the video made for showing. It was just a video recording of the performance in Cēsis. And after the show, we had a short meeting with Reinis Boters, one of the actors participating in the performance. So, well, taking into consideration that this was not the pure performance, but a video recording, can you just give the feedback of this project you have understood or seen, or have you been impressed? And also, maybe about this practice which is nowadays seems to be more and more popular, to show video recordings. There are even theater festivals in Europe currently that are collecting video recordings of performances to be shown like normal practice. So if you could reach these two things. Anneli, you're holding the mic.
Yes. So actually, I think the concept is really interesting, and we really appreciate that actually this concept was also explained to us. What was the purpose of the project and how it was built up and so on. Because otherwise, I think at least I had quite controversial feelings, and let me tell you about why.
Please do. We are not we're not afraid of controversies, because I think our different opinions doesn't impact our.
Because of course one could relate to the performance through the similar topics, because everybody who has old parents or grandparents knows the way of thinking, the music taste, and so on, and frets and so on. So basically, I think that the topic of getting old and how younger people can cope with it, it's really universal and very human. But then now when we go to details, then of course we have similar television shows as was presented in the production. But I did not know these particular shows, these particular hosts, and so on. So I think all the web of connotations related to the production was lost. Also, the songs were not familiar for me. The text of the songs were not also translated, so only the text of the actors was translated. And we have also in Tartu currently a new production called Granny, that is also trying to actually tackle the same topic, but more through smells and so on. So these two productions, the Latvian one and the Estonian one, really bear some similarities. But I think that maybe the production was made in rush, but it was really only tackling this kind of surface of this topic, making jokes. And this is also, I think, ethically a little bit problematic, and it was also a problem in Tartu, that of course sometimes old people might seem strange, but is it a good thing to make joke out of that? And also maybe too stereotypic stuff were tackled without maybe deeper reflection. But I understood based on the reaction of audiences that it was meant as a comedy. Was it so? Was it meant to be a comedy or comic?
Well, I'm not sure that I can answer, because I think it's a matter of reception, because well, there were, of course, comic episodes, and but I don't think that they were trying to mock anything in any ways.
Because we heard laughing in the audience, in the recording. So that's why I just did not understand what was the communication between the stage and audiences, and what was the exact aim of the theatre makers.
I don't think I agree with you in this, but no, I just also want to start that the first time I heard of quadrifrons was, I think, 2 years ago.
I think it's third year already.
Yeah, when we saw the performance in the Riga circus. And yes, and it was really interesting, and I was like, oh, this is a new group in Riga, in Latvia, that I really want to know what they're doing, because I understood that they just came out of school and started this new company almost without no money, and went to this circus and to this empty building and started doing theater. And I want to say that we actually saw another performance by quadrifrons, LV versus RU, which talked about Russians and Latvians. And so for me, it's actually really interesting that young people are talking about, in a way, the marginalized issues or topics. Of course, maybe I think the relationship between Latvians and Russians probably is not marginalized in Latvia, that you have it more than we in Estonia have, but it's still interesting that young people talk about it, and it's the same with the ageism, or that you even take this kind of a subject. And for me, I think, okay, people were laughing, but I think it was like not laughing nende üle. They were laughing with the people, not at them, yes. And I was really thankful that the actor came and really gave more of this like context and background info, and it really widened also the performance for me, because also the actors gave really personal stories about their grandmothers. Even you can see even on the screen the tears in their eyes. So I really don't think that they were mocking the old people, but I think it's really a way that young people can get closer to these kind of issues. And of course, it's really hard to watch a performance online or through video. I think it would have been different to watch it on the stage and with the other people who were, I don't know, local. But I think this project was really interesting, and that's why I think it's really nice that young people are talking about these kind of issues.
Just a short remark that the topic of old people is tackled also by Elmars Senkos with his new theater group founded this spring called Esarte, the new graduates of Latvian Academy of Culture, and they did a research on old people's house, and he made a production called The Last Hours. So it seems to be a trend for young actors to tackle this.
No, but just to add, but without knowing the context, I think I really took the performance differently. So that's why I say that it was really nice that the actor came and it gave me like a new perspective how to understand this performance better.
Paul?
Yes, I think the setup that we had for watching this performance was like very good, that we were all sitting in the same room, it was dark and we had a screen, and it really made us commit more to concentrating. And I think actually the way the camera worked, it's also, I don't like it when it's when performances are recorded with several cameras and there is a lot of editing done, because I want to make some of the choices myself, like what do I focus on, and also the feeling of the audience. I felt as part of the audience or with the cameraman who was laughing at some points. It's funny to say, but that this watching an online performance and seeing it, I think this was actually until we have one performance to see yet, but this was my favorite, and for reasons that probably are just the way I like theater. I like the fact that there was elements of comedy, that they try to make people like loosen up and maybe laugh a bit, but at the same time you get people to hear stories that are really personal and really tragic. So at first you open them a bit up and then you get into their heart, and it really worked that way, even in this screened and translated way. I still felt afterwards this emotion that, okay, not to even call my grandma, but to even call my mother, or to have this feeling towards, these positive feelings towards close people who are older and who might need help at some point. I also liked the fact that it was playful, that it had very different elements of theater, and hearing the background later on that it's actually played in smaller cities, it even made it, I think, better for me, because it's always nice that you go to a smaller place and you show different ways how theater can be done. That sort of brings people, I think, more closer to what's actually theater, or it widens their perspective. Otherwise, we sort of think of theater, if we are not very familiar with it, we have a certain perception that it's a bit
elitist?
A bit elitist, and a bit more like on topics that are written maybe a few hundred years ago, when it's some kind of very eloquent way of speaking and behaving, but that was really like a TV show, which everyone knows, another TV show everyone knows, singing. It really brought it close to people. Yeah, I like the energy, and I'm happy that I now know a theater group called Quadrifrons.
So we discussed also that there was this interesting thing of scale, and I think really jury has always these hard decisions to make, whether it is, especially this season, whether it is a large scale or small scale production. And here as well, it has a nomination as large scale production. However, we might found it controversial in a way. And here we have also a nominee for a best musical score, since, as you heard the story, the songs were collected from the grandmothers and then children joined in to invent new lyrics and all these things we talked about. I was going to say that obviously it is worthy to have what we can call these networking meetings, or when theater makers come to talk with colleagues from other countries, because sometimes it helps to get know better, to give more context, and to know better, not to explain what was meant, because theater is a form that speaks by itself. However, maybe some details are missing sometimes. Haley, do you have something to say about it? No? Do we? Can we go on? Is it okay with the microphone?
It's okay.
Okay, great. So among the shows you can see, you have seen during these 4 days, there were also some examples of world classics, and one of them was written by Gabriel Garcia Lorca, The Empty Flower, or Jerma, done by Latvian National Theatre, or director Ināra Slutska. And this is also, I think, all the rest of performances, we've all been together and we have seen, so we can just share our different or similar opinions regarding both acting, both set design, and general impressions about the performances. What I was going to add, that as you can see in a booklet, that Jerma has 6 nominations for Performers' Night Award. It's for the director, for the actress of the year, for the choreographer of the year, which is also rather important, also the musical score, and best lighting. So considering all the categories, and could you put it together with your impressions this production has made to you?
So again, starting with little detour. Always when theatre awards are given in Estonia, I always think that do we award only the form, or do we also take the content, the topic into consideration? And because often I can find that the most interesting, content-wise, most interesting productions are made by devising or by improvisation and so on, and maybe they have more loose form, or maybe the theatre makers haven't had so much money to hire stenographers and light designers and so on. So very often it happens that interesting productions are awarded. And often this kind of very traditional, text-based, well-made text-based production receive awards. So, and little bit similar topic, I think, also happened with this production, because first of all, I really enjoyed the visuality of the production, the scenography, light design, and musical score. So I think that abstract way, it was really very unique. And somehow for me in theatre, it's very important that theatre makers will find different ways of expression. And since I'm also teaching theatre history, then actually often I have very when my students ask me that you are talking about Grieg and Appia and this kind of abstract set design, but show us where is this kind of set design. And usually I cannot find from contemporary Estonian theatre examples where this kind of very clear lines are used, and also the chairs were in line on the scenography, and so it was like relatively empty. And again, I would like to pray that actually also in Estonia, actually it's very difficult to find big stage production that are really could be nominated as artistic works, because more and more often on big stage only maybe comedies and light entertainment are shown. So we could really see how the director and scenographer, how they are able to use the stage. But then, of course, I think what we are when we are talking about acting, it's so much related to the cultural context. And even when I was really enjoying the acting of the main role, Maja Doveika. But coming from north, for me, there were some scenes when it was maybe a little bit melodramatic, or I had difficulties in believing in this character and so on. Maybe it's also, as I said, that a person of the question of the cultural context. And then what we're also discussing with our colleagues, that is this production somehow also important content-wise to Latvian audiences? Is it so that many Latvian women have a feeling that their most important social function is to give birth, or why this play is produced in 21st century, or do you have many housewives who don't know what to do with their lives, and so on. So we had like more questions than answers. Why exactly this text, and how the text is touching or tackling local audiences?
I think it was like a real pleasure to all senses, but for me, yeah, like I couldn't really get hooked on the story, so that was a bit like I mean, if I would really like to see how the director would work on a different material, because I think like the way it all like looked and how it was like just flowing and how precise it was, I think there is a lot of talent there. So I would really like to see some different material with the same director.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you that the visual part of the show was very pleasing to the eye, and I very much enjoyed seeing it. But content-wise, I felt that there was really just, it was a story about miscommunication, basically. So just the easiest thing to do would have been Jarmo to leave during the 10 minutes of the performance, and the story would have been over. But taking into account that it's actually a classics and comes from the beginning of the last century, like the beginning of the 1900s, it might be, of course, a bit different. It was different in this time. So yeah, I also agree with Anneli that maybe it's not really topical to stage it like this in those days.
I think considering the form of the performance, I liked it the most in a way. It was just like,
Form.
yeah, if you just for example, take the pure form, like what people were mentioning already, the visual, but also the form of the directing, that it was very slow. There were long pauses. They really took time to give the text. Also this kind of mise-en-scènes that were put on the stage. And what I found really interesting is, because I've also been to Latvia and seen the performances by Latvian National Theatre before, that I saw also in the, let's say, the smaller roles, also people who, for example, today were in the main role. And I was just thinking whether in the biggest theatres in Estonia, can you say to the actors that in this performance your only role is to be part of the mass and you don't have any words to say, but tomorrow you will be in the leading part. And that's why also what I like with Latvian theatre, that you, at least in my opinion, that you know more how to use the big stages and how to use actors to create different mise-en-scènes.
In Estonia, in comparison.
Yes, at least compared to what I've seen, though that's what I enjoyed very much. But yes, we really, because I also talking about the content, that I was really thinking that if this is a feminist performance or not, and I really want to believe it's feminist, because otherwise I'd say like, exactly why do you do it in the 21st century? Because I tried to think that as the form itself was so poetical, that also maybe the content was also more poetical or more metaphoric, that we thought that that the child could be a metaphor for, I don't know, emancipating as a woman, but it's maybe I want to see it this way, and it didn't actually happen on the stage. But I think it was a really interesting performance to see.
There were also the water allusions that you brought up, I think, that Christian background.
But I was thinking, sitting in an auditorium, that what are men thinking about this performance? I don't know, it just came to my mind.
By the way.
Like if they come with their wives, do people get divorced afterwards? I don't know.
Well, I think that it is always, when you are tackling the material, which belongs 100 years ago, as Hannah mentioned, and especially when it is Garcia Lorca, where these very symbolic and very metaphoric layers, you have to be very careful of reducing them. And I can also share these questions you have posed regarding this production, that probably the larger attention to this metaphorical sense would have brought more value to the production. Well, Saturday, the 7th of November, has been the performance of different types of women, because second performance was Margarete, a play written at the end of the 90s by Latvian dramaturg Māra Zālīte, which has certain references to classical story of Faust and different contexts relevant back then in the beginning of the new of the 2000, and when still Latvia was not part of European Union, so you can see there different, this postmodern construction where classical topics meet reality back then, and also it is one of the productions made during the pandemic, during this summer, which implies, I assume, several solutions applied by stage director Reinis Suhanovs. And this is the nominee for Performers Night as one of the best small-scale productions. Best Actor of the Year, Kārlis Rejers, who was also playing in The Boy Who Saw in the Dark. And Best Set Designer and also Director of this performance, Reinis Suhanovs. And as I was just going to add that parallel to the reality that was happening in the theater, while audience were exchanging the place during the performance, this production was also available on Zoom, through Zoom virtually. So this might give also some additional context, for instance, that they were working both for audience in presence and for audience at their screens, so as we were doing with our discussions a few days ago. So can we go on with Margaret?
Yeah, I can start. I have to be honest, this is the performance I enjoyed the least during the festival, and exactly I think I realized since the beginning that it was really the Corona time performance, and they really started in Zoom, and personally I would have said, like, you can stay in Zoom, because I'm sorry, it's also Sunday, I'm sorry. But because I started in the room with a lawyer, and what I actually liked about the room was that it was next to the street, so we really heard the street noises, and let's say the reality made it into a performance, the real sounds from outside. But yeah, I think there was like actually no connection between the two characters, or let's say the Margarete, who has been in jail for 25 years. I don't know, I didn't believe it for a minute, or I didn't see it in her character, and also as Anneli was saying before, that she's as a psychologist, but I as a sociologist always think that why is this text produced right now? What does it say to the people? And why does it use Faust as a like reference point? Because I understand, of course, when you do it during Corona and people are locked down in their house, and it's really similar to the prison situation, that you're also in prison and you can't talk to anybody. But all these things didn't work for me in this performance. So yeah, I stop here.
So Hetilis was wondering about the function of the play and the production. Isn't it obvious? Also in Estonia, usually world classic or national classic are often produced in theatre for school children. And this could be called also Faust Part 3. So basically in the first act, they were telling just the story of the Faust Part 1. Because it was really giving the plot, and often actually school children only they learn the plot by heart, because I think that the meaning and function of the art is to know the plots. So, but we have a little bit different experiences with Hetilis, because I started in the room with Margareete. And I think the acting of Taiga Kazotšina was really first quite engaging, but I also noted that actually she had little bit double consciousness, because she couldn't make up her mind. Was she playing to the camera or to the live audiences? And in the beginning, I really hoped that we will create some kind of contact with the actress. But actually, I think that the camera or audiences, virtual audiences, won the battle. So I really felt that I'm left there alone. And it was 2 hours and 30 minutes. I think the story was not, in the first part, was not really so engaging. And then suddenly, in the second part, really quickly, quite surprising twists happened. And I think that twist did not really grow out of the first part, and so on. So I think it's also the text-wise, I don't think that it worked very well. And also when you are watching the performances through computer screens, small computer screens, then some people might like it, but I'm not definitely a big fan of online theaters. This is just a personal taste.
I have to say that probably I am the youngest person here. I'm the youngest person here, so I haven't seen so many interpretations of Faust on the stage yet, as probably other people have. So for me, it wasn't tiring at all. I think it was rather interesting take on these classics, and also the environment of a prison is not that is seen on the stage very often, because it's probably quite hard to bring on the stage to make it believable. And so just connecting those two parts, the very brutal or very realistic prison environment, and this poetic piece of literature that is written in verse. I think it was interesting blend of these two. And what else? I think it was interesting that this performance was a bit VIP, because we got to see the back rooms of the theater, and there was also not so many people in the audience. So in this sense, it was rather different from the other performances that we saw during these 4 days. And story-wise as well, I agree that in the first half it was more static and maybe a bit people got sleepy in the room. But in the other half, it was interesting for me, and I think it was also, it had a surprising ending, so it wasn't definitely that the engagement somehow dropped, or I think it was elevated more towards the end, so that by the end of it I was definitely really interested in what's happening, and also felt a bit scared even, because the outside noises somehow connected to the story, and then there was this suicide attempt of Margareta, or even suicide. I guess it went through. So this part was really like touching and personal, actually.
Paul, anything to add? Or no? Okay. What do you think, Hanna, of this parallel worlds that are, well, first of all, there are 2 parallel rooms in the theater, as you mentioned, and then there is this like Zoom audience. Is it wise or is it not to be on these 2 parallel realities? Because as Anneli mentioned, there was a problem with engagement, that it seemed that Margareta at the first act was more engaged with the audience behind the screens than in the hall. How do you look at this?
Yeah, I agree with Anneli that the people that got to see Margareta in the first half were a bit like in a better position, because it was a story about Margareta after all, so she was the main character, at least to me, and it made sense to be in her side of the story at first. But maybe if I had been in the other room at first, in the advocates or the lawyers room, then yeah, probably it would have been a different experience. So I also understand what Heli-Liis said. So,
and in Zoom as a parallel, can you imagine just that you are watching in Zoom when you are probably seeing the both of? I mean, there is a different reality, and this is also, I think, first experience of production that is that there were some productions in Latvian theatre produced particularly for audiences looking at them through screen. But this was this parallel situation, and on the one hand, there's a very daring position. On the other, it is probably your risk. You always have this risk.
I think if it had been on Zoom entirely, for us, the engagement of the audience would have been lower, or it would have been easier to just like walk away, because the captivation of the story like became to reality when you were in the room with them, even though there were also screens. So I think it was better that we got to see them live, not on Zoom.
Live is always better than engineered in a way.
Even in this performances case. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you very much. We are approaching the last day of Baltic Drama Forum, and last 2 productions we were able to show you live. Unfortunately, there is still, we are recording this on Sunday, and on Sunday evening we still have 1 production to see, which is The Depraved Ones, directed by Krista Burāne at Dirty Deal Teatro. So therefore we are not including this performance in our discussion. But now we will pass to... Well, we could try, right? And then compare with the real impressions. That would be nice. You know, there is this saying that unless I have not read or I have not seen, I have an opinion. We could do that. No, but we will get into another subject, which is based on Finnish piece by Juha Jokela, Finlandization, and it's one more production by Walter Seals in National Theatre. And here the comment I would like to add, just for context, if you're analyzing the sets or the feeling that this production initially was shown in the large hall of the theatre, and it was recently transmitted to the Actors Hall, which is the smallest venue of National Theatre there in the cellar. I'm not sure if I will answer correctly, but I think that initially that was planned as one of the one of the performances people will go to see, and afterwards, with the corona restrictions, it is, I mean, both for economical reasons and for other, it was like the transfer to this other hall, but I'm not sure if I'm giving you 100% right reason. So you could just bear in mind that initially it was on the big stage, and probably... Yes, exactly. Audience was sitting in regular seats, and the set was on the large stage of National Theatre. So if it changes something, for instance, what you were wondering about meanwhile watching, who is going to start about Finlandization and whether the topic is relevant and how do you feel with it? Haley, you're...
No, I can then start. Yeah. No, I also want to say that I'm also a really big fan of Walter Siilis, and when I hear that we can see his performances, that I, in a way, already have a positive approach to this. That it maybe I don't like it, but it's at least I know that it's going to be interesting. And also for me, it's also I've seen like especially political theater by Walter Siilis also in the Actors Hall before. So it seems to me like it's the stage for Walter Siilis political theater, because I know that this performance, the Finlandization, has also been staged in Estonia, in the Estonia drama theater, and then it was really a comedy. And I don't know if it was also meant to be a comedy here, but it was not a comedy sitting in the actor's stage. But that's what I actually liked about it, that it was really topical, political, the things that they were talking about. I could also see it right now in Estonian stages. The text was really intellectual, and if you say that it was staged for the big stage, then I really actually enjoyed that people were sitting on both sides of the set. I think it really also brought the story closer to you. I really liked the actors, especially Taisto and Jone, who were the two like the sidekicks of the main character. I think I really enjoyed their roles, and I think noticed the Finnishness in them, at least in the character of Taisto. Yes, and also I think I liked it because the text was like most intellectual. It didn't talk about relationships. We also discussed it already, that it really talked about something that is important for us right now. And also Walter Siilis has made a production in Ugala, in Viljandi, that also talked about a startup in a way. And also in this, they're making this kind of new machine. And of course, it's a different story, that it's really more about political issues and the relationship with Russia and and about values and all these kind of things. But still, it's also made a connection with the Estonian production about also people starting a new thing and how to deal with it. Yeah, I think that's all for now. And that's also interesting for me, how the screens were used then on a big stage. Because I also think that it worked really well with the 4 like desks or working spaces on 4 corners. You can really see the screens very well. You saw what was happening there. I think the set design, at least in the Actors Hall, was also like worked really well. So I really enjoyed it, especially in this hall. I'm not sure if I would have enjoyed it as much in the big stage.
It's funny that it was actually made to the big stage, because I was also like, even when I was sitting down, I was thinking like, oh, it's like cool that, you know, Walters has made this choice to stage it like this, that it's like it works very well because you get very close, but it didn't really. Sometimes when you have people sitting like this, you always start looking at the other side, like what they're doing. But in this performance, I didn't really like bother at all. I was like very well connected to the story. And I think what I liked, like it was this question, like is it a comedy or is it not a comedy? I think I liked the balance, or like maybe even like taking it a bit away from the comedy, that it had this nice pace. It had these moments of laughter, but it wasn't really like laughter. It was just like this ironic, yeah. And I think that's also like, so you said it's intellectual, and I felt also that it was nice to be in the room with these characters and to see how it goes. And I think one thing is that I just have to wait and see what will happen after a few days, like what will I recollect then, because right now it's like 2 hours after seeing the show, so it always takes a bit of time. But yeah, it was really good in a way that what can sometimes be a good sign is that when you don't notice how fast the time goes. And I think with this show it really, like, you know, the time went by quickly. I was really into the story.
Yeah, starting with a little detour again. when a person reaches to a certain age, and she has seen thousands productions about human relations, love stories, and so on, and has a feeling that she or he knows almost everything about human relations that is possible to say through theatre language, then one starts to wonder, has theatre offered to such kind of person who is not particularly interested in human relations anymore? And fortunately, this production showed that yes, of course, theatre is not only about human relations, but in theatre you can also talk about very serious political and ethical issues. So I really appreciated the choice of the text, because I think it's very important, and not only in Finland, but also in Baltic. But we were also wondering with my colleague that since, of course, the title, the Finlandization, it's a term, certain term, but does it give a sign to local audiences that this play is not only about Finland, but rather certain way of behavior or mental structure? Yes, okay, yeah. So also here I understood also why this play is produced in Latvia, because I think we should talk about this kind of issues. I also really appreciated the set design, also the screens, the laptop screens were showing, because I think every detail was somehow in place and was very telling. I also enjoyed very much really the acting, because when you are sitting 1 or 2 meters from an actor, actually it's very difficult to cheat the spectator, but they were really in very, very well structured roles, and also the presence of actors was excellent. And of course I agree with Hetilis, what Hetilis talked about the 3 male leading actors, especially of course this Taisto, Ivars Klevinskis. I really found that he was very much Finnish-like. But I would like to also point out to Voldemars Šorins, who really played a tiny role, the old guy, but I really enjoyed how he had really made this kind of very small role something significant, and how he was also scrolling his mobile phone all the time, also breaking this kind of stereotypes, because I think often in theatre makers too often rely on stereotypes. And here we could really see that this was an interesting, very small role. So thank you.
Anneli says all, but I'm very thankful. But I see this performance in a small stage, because this is, I think, greatest performance in this Latvian drama forums, and yes, I like this.
I think it is really lucky move to the smaller space, right? Yes, I agree totally. Well, so far we have discussed all the performances we have seen so far in the showcase, except 2 digital performances that were included. They are not nominees of the Performers' Night. However, there were 2 different examples of digital theatre in Latvia made during this pandemic period. The first one was initially planned to show them for you. Meanwhile, you are waiting the corona test results in your hotel room, which was literally meant for that reason, that probably if our dear colleagues from Lithuania would have come, they could definitely not to leave the hotel until the tests are done. So this was meant that you are sitting in your hotel room and watching this performance, and it was produced. It was a co-production directed by Vladislavs Nastafšas, also a figure among mid-generation Latvian stage directors. It was an experimental production in a way, as you might see. Also the title of the text by Sergei Ukhanov is a draft, so it's a draft also in a way, literally as an experimental form. And it is a co-production by Riga Russian Theatre and International Summer Festival of Arts, Tochka Dostupa in Russia. So this is one example, and another was the White Lady, a ghost story, again by Walter Sīlis, accidentally, a part of the White Cube, which was the e-platform of Latvian National Theatre, created also during pandemic times. So for an excuse, the digital theatre in this case has been a solution for pandemic time. And taking into consideration, would you like to share experience about these two productions, those who have seen it? Haley, you have holding a mic.
Yes,
Can you start?
This is a very difficult moment now because I don't
Well, it
like
happens.
this performance. Both don't like because
Okay.
First one was screaming, and I don't like where in theater screaming, a lot screaming, and that this is not in the stage or in the online. It's same. It's
Screaming.
Bad. Yes, this is bad. And the other one was like comic, but this is not my taste. This is not my cup of tea. And,
Okay.
But I think this performance we need, and I'm thankful to see, because this is maybe pandemic times theater, and hopeful we in the future we don't see this one. Well, maybe this is like a kindergarten theater, and after 2 years we go to online performance, and this is a good performance. Now we need this bad performance to go the good one.
Okay.
I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, if you remember, I was quite critical about the Margareta, and I said that it was a Zoom performance and it could have stayed in Zoom. And as Anneli said, I'm also not a very big fan of this kind of online performances. But for me, I also didn't enjoy these two performances very much, but I really also felt that I was not the audience who it was made for. And I think that at least with these two performances, I really felt that it was a project the theatre made to be in contact with their audiences. So probably also with the draft, my problem was that I can't understand Russian, or I understand a little, and I couldn't follow the text. And then when I was reading the synopsis, it seemed that it's really absurd. And for me, it was really this kind of typical Zoom conference with people just changing their backgrounds. I also did it during using Zoom, so we know how to do it. And with the second performance with the White Lady, it was like full of so many things that was really hard to follow, but I felt that maybe the audiences of National Theatre just wanted to see it because there were a lot of like visuals of the theatre, so maybe your heart goes just warm to see the theatre house. And as we already discussed in the discussion on Friday, that I think the problem with this kind of online performances is that the theatre people are not meant for using this type of mediums, especially also on technical level, that if you include, like the people who have studied film are so much more familiar, so I really didn't find them also technically like on a really high level, and that's why maybe they just passed me in a way.
Starting with a little detour. I'm afraid that in future we will see a lot of online performances where there are 2 or 3 or 4 talking heads. Now, since you already were so critical, I just want to point out one positive and interesting thing is that actually the director was really, I think he was self-ironic, or at least this is the way I explained it, and he was really trying to also modify the faces with the jars and whales and so on, and I think it's also like we could recognize everybody who had Zoom meetings, how people or the images are freezing or defractured and so on. So I think it's also visually, it was something like a novel, and I would like to encourage the Nastavshevs and the group to test maybe other forms, but I agree that for Estonians, like this is too expressive, but it was not so interesting to call it expressionist theater.
So for the first one, I also felt that there was a big language barrier for me, as I don't really understand Russian enough, and just on the basis of the synopsis, it wasn't really possible to follow. Yeah, no, that's fine. And the second one, The White Lady, I think it would be very suitable for teenagers. Like, for example, my 11-year-old sister would be the right audience for it. It was like flashy, it was colorful, it was short enough, just 30 minutes, so it would be something to help to bring teenagers into theater or make them interested in theater, for example. So I think there's definitely an element of excitement connected to this, and there would be an audience for this performance in Estonia as well, but maybe just not in this group of people so much.
I think what I thought when I watched both of them is that in theater, it's if we have a real stage and audience, it's very okay to be symbolistic in your language, or to make give more time for certain sentences and take your time and sort of you create the world that is different. But if you watch something on the screen and it requires a much faster pace, but if you still stick to the same symbolistic text, then my head just explodes.
Literally.
I just can't grasp all the connotations, and because you can't give that much time on the screen, otherwise I will just turn it off. Then you start like adding the pace, but then you need to have a different type of storytelling also. You can't use the same type of theatrical language there, because it's almost impossible to follow. I was really fresh that morning, and I had drank my tea and everything, but I was just like 3 sentences, and I was like, okay, let's try again. 3 sentences, and no, I just get lost so quickly, and I think that's the problem with the form.
Yeah, but also just to add one more positive things in the end with this online performance is that we have also said already, I think also to the camera, that compared to Estonians, that Latvians have done much more online performances, that really have tried to do something or have tried new forms or have tried to, I don't know, get to the audiences also with different types of online performance, and I think that's something really valuable, and to just follow or to understand that, oh, you can also use this kind of medium, or you're forced to use this kind of medium, and then you're actually doing it.
Well, both Paul and Hedilis at the end have pointed out to 2 very important issues that actually theater of today has to face. One of them is the pace, and another is this, how do we deal further with this online, since the snowball has started to fall, so let's see where it goes, especially during the lockdown time. We are going on lockdown from November 9 to December 6. So it will be 4 more weeks with, I see Haley's reaction. Everybody is afraid of that, and hopefully Estonia does not have to do this, because it's really a challenging time for all of us. And before we go to see the last performance of the showcase at the Depraved Ones, I would like just you all to think of 1, 2, 3 keywords that you will bring from this showcase that will stick in your memory, because it could be, I don't know, text, screen, I don't know, everybody has his own things, and maybe it refers to the situation that Latvian theater also is facing these days. So what are 3 notions or 3 topics that you will bring with you in your thoughts when you leave? Second mic. Okay, let's think for, I don't know, a few seconds.
3 notions that we
yeah, well, that is first three words that come across. It might be an actor, it might be director, it might be production, it might be phenomenon, it might be anything else, just to see these lightning of thoughts that you will have, and it probably also gives a part of feedback. Have you already?
Yes, I'm very quick. No, but I think the first is that I think I take from Latvia each time I'm here the set design, or the like really different things, like with the Yerma on the big stage and the Finlandization in the actor stage, and it's really that I think a lot of effort is put into set design, lighting design, also the sound design. I think this year it was really like a lot of the things were nominated, and you can really understand that much effort has put into this. I think the second for me is that, as we already discussed, that a lot of marginalized groups are brought on the stage, the blind people, older people, the Russian-Latvian relationship, but you do it in a quite in a playful way, and not, it's not like forced political theater, but it's also a way to talk about these kind of things. And I think we also see it in Estonia, that more and more this kind of marginalized groups are getting noticed in the theater, but that's what I noticed here in Latvia. And yeah, probably for me, the third is Walter Siili's two productions, because the Finlandizations and the Boy Who Saw in the Dark, I think so far have been for me the best ones. So he's still in good shape and way to go.
We have talked about this for years actually, but I hope that one day there will be some material or some production that our Kinoteater can do together with Walter Siilis. But I think we just wait for the perfect material or the perfect setup. Then secondly, I think I will definitely remember these quadriphons. I would like to see what they're going to do next, or what they're about. And I think thirdly, I'm just, okay, there's still a few more hours that you have to be hospitable, but I think the organizational side has been faultless. And I, as an organizer myself, I'm in great awe of how you have done this. So those are the three things.
In Latvia, it's very good actors, and the other one is team or materials. Very many plays or performance was childhood traumas. And I think this is different and important. And last one, I want to go back, not go back to home. I want to come back in Latvia and see more this theater, because I think this year is not the bestest. I've been here 1 year ago, and I think this was better. Yes. Mm-hmm. I want next year come here and see the Latvian theater.
Yeah, you come to Latvian theater, so your impression would be like, first fresh impression.
Also my first time in the Baltic Theatre Forum, a drama forum. So yeah, I think the keyword is that we saw very lot of different theater, like in terms of form and also topics, but topics-wise, conceptualizing womanhood was for me the one thing that really was seen here a lot. And another thing is Walter Siilis, of course. We saw lots of works by him, and I would like to see what he's planning to do in the future as well. And what's more, I really liked the atmosphere at Gertrude Street Theatre, so I hope to visit this place again in the future, and also keep myself updated on quadriphones, and maybe they also come to Estonia in the future, so I hope to see them again.
I would like to take with me at first a unique kind of closeness and this playful structures which come with documentary theatre. This intensivity and intellectual actor playing, which comes with Finlandization, and this poetical language and directing, which comes with Irma.
Anneli, you are the master of summing up, so
Thank you.
and make a detour.
At all. So my first keyword is rootedness in the past, because I think this is so common for Estonian and Latvian theatre that whenever I have been coming back, that we constantly deal with our past. And during the former visits, I had a feeling that our young directors are super interested in historical traumas like Second World War, deportations and so on, Forest Brothers and so on. This time it was maybe more this kind of personal traumatic past. But nevertheless, it's also interesting that it's also for young people that the past and present are so tightly intertwined. So the second is probably related to the online theatre, but not only. So I would say it's human and the interaction between human and screens, especially screens. And I think this is the direction where Latvian theatre is really developing quite fast, and also trying out different versions. And of course, the third one you could already predict, it's Walter Siilis. And if you want to know more about Walter Siilis, then 2 years ago I made an interview with Walter Siilis, and it was printed
In Estonian.
our cultural newspaper, Sirp. And I was quite pleased with the responses Walter gave me, so recommend it to read it. And of course, I'm super proud that my hunch was right, because then I had a feeling that this is one interesting, very interesting director who could be the new so-called Alvis Hermannis.
Wow.
So I keep my fingers crossed for Walter Siilis.
Well, on this bright note, everybody has said his or her keywords for possible future of Latvian theatre. We are going on a pause. Meanwhile, I think theatres will keep doing something during the lockdown, and let's see how the situation develops. I think the jury of Performers' Night will have hard decisions to make, as always, because it's never been easy to assign these annual awards. And we encourage them to listen to our discussion and have this Estonian view from a side. I think it is very important, despite we might make detours or being critical or being praising, I think the eye from a side is very valuable for everybody, for theater makers, for jury working with theater makers. And in Baltics, we still have this closeness. We have our common things, our different things, our comparative perspectives, since we have seen several titles staged both in Latvia and Estonia. So I thank everybody participating in this discussion: Heidi, Anneli, Hedilis, Hanna, Haley, and Paul. And thank you for watching us. It was the Performers' Night discussion at Baltic Drama Forum. Thank you.